Captain Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of the UES Liberty with his morning coffee in hand. The ship was 3 weeks into their deep space exploration mission when something changed everything. The Liberty was humanity's newest and best exploration vessel, built to find new worlds and maybe answer the old question of whether humans were alone in the universe. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at her station monitoring all communication frequencies when her screen started flashing red warnings. She had been the ship's communication expert for 5 years and had never seen patterns like this before. The signal was coming from somewhere far away, much farther than any human ship had ever traveled. Amy called out to the captain with excitement in her voice. "Captain Morrison, you need to see this right now. We're picking up something that shouldn't exist." Jake set down his coffee and walked over to Amy's station. The screen showed wave patterns that looked nothing like human technology or natural space phenomena. The signal was clearly artificial, but it was unlike anything in their computer databases. "What am I looking at, Amy?" Jake asked while studying the strange patterns on her screen. "It's definitely artificial intelligence, Captain, but these patterns are completely unknown to us. The signal is broadcasting on frequencies we didn't even know were possible. And Captain, there's something else." The patterns seemed desperate, like whoever sent this is screaming for help. Commander Rick Torres came over from his tactical station to see what was happening. Rick had been in the Space Force for 15 years and had seen every type of signal humans could create. This was something entirely different. "How far away is the source?" Rick asked Amy while looking at the signal data. Amy ran the calculations on her computer. "The signal is coming from the Kepler 442 system. That's about 3 months away from our current position, even at our maximum warp speed." Dr. Lisa Hamilton, the ship's chief medical officer, joined them at the communication station. Lisa had been Jake's friend since their academy days and often served as his advisor on difficult decisions. "Can you translate any of it?" Jake asked Amy. Amy's fingers moved quickly across her keyboard as she ran the signal through every translation program the ship had. "I'm trying, Captain, but this is completely alien. The mathematical structures are logical, but they don't match any human language patterns." For the next 6 hours, Amy worked with the ship's computer to break down the alien signal. She used pattern recognition software, mathematical analysis, and even tried musical interpretation methods. Slowly, piece by piece, a message began to form. Jake stayed on the bridge the entire time, watching Amy work. The rest of the crew continued their normal duties, but everyone kept glancing over at the communication station. News had spread quickly through the ship that they might have found proof of alien life. Finally, Amy looked up from her station with a pale face. "Captain, I've got most of it translated. You're not going to like what it says." Amy put the translation on the main screen for everyone to see. The message read, "To any who hear this transmission, we are the last survivors of the Nexari Coalition. Our worlds are burning around us. The creatures we call the Devourers are consuming everything in their path. We have fought them for 300 of your years, but we have failed completely. If there are other intelligent species listening to this, do not come to help us. Do not risk your people. Save yourselves while you still can." The bridge went completely silent. Everyone stared at the screen, reading the message again and again. This was first contact with an alien species, but it was also a cry for help from a dying civilization. Rick was the first to speak. "Captain, this could be some kind of trap. We have no way to verify if this message is real or if these aliens are telling the truth." Lisa nodded in agreement. "Rick's right, Jake. We've never encountered alien life before. We don't know their motivations or capabilities. This could be bait to lure human ships into some kind of ambush." Jake understood their concerns, but something about the message felt genuine to him. The mathematical patterns Amy had shown him suggested panic and desperation, not deception. "Amy, is there any way to determine how old this signal is?" Jake asked. Amy checked her readings again. "Based on the signal degradation and the distance it traveled, I estimate this message was sent about 4 months ago. That means whatever was happening to these Nexari people was already in progress when they sent this." Jake looked at the star charts on Rick's tactical display. The Kepler 442 system was far outside human space, in a region they had never explored. Intelligence reports from Earth had mentioned some unusual energy readings from that sector, but no one had expected anything like this. "Captain," Rick said while studying the navigation data, "even if we left right now at maximum warp, it would take us 3 months to reach that system. By then, whatever was happening there could be completely finished. Dr. Hamilton placed her hand on Jake's shoulder. Jake, I know what you're thinking, but we have to consider the safety of our crew. We have 87 people on this ship, and they're counting on us to make smart decisions. Jake walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars through the main view screen. He thought about his duty as a Starfleet captain and his responsibility to his crew. But he also thought about what it meant to be human. Throughout human history, whenever someone cried out for help, there were always people who responded. When ships sank in the ocean, other ships changed course to help with rescue efforts. When earthquakes destroyed cities, people from around the world sent aid. When disasters struck, humans had a natural instinct to help even when it was dangerous. Jake turned back to his crew. I know this is risky, and I know we're probably flying into something we don't understand. But someone out there sent a distress signal and we heard it. That makes us responsible. Rick shook his head. Captain, Starfleet regulations are clear about unauthorized contact with unknown alien species. We should report this to Earth Command and wait for instructions. If we wait for instructions from Earth, these people will definitely be dead, Jake replied. The signal is 4 months old already. By the time Earth analyzes this data and sends orders back to us, it will be too late to help anyone. Amy looked up from her station. Captain, I'm still receiving the signal. It's getting weaker, but it's still broadcasting. That means someone is still alive out there, still hoping someone will hear them. Jake made his decision. Amy, send a message back on the same frequency. Tell them that humans received their signal and are coming to help. Rick, set course for the Kepler 442 system. Maximum warp speed, Dr. Hamilton sighed. Jake, I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Lisa, Jake replied as he watched the stars begin to streak past the view screen. So do I. 3 months later, the UES Liberty dropped out of warp speed at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge looking at the main view screen. But what he saw there made his stomach turn cold. The system was filled with massive ships that looked nothing like anything humans had ever built. The alien vessels were enormous, each one several kilometers long and shaped like living creatures rather than mechanical constructs. They pulsed with sickly green and red lights that seemed to flow through their hulls like blood through veins. Dozens of these ships moved between the planets, and wherever they went, the worlds below them seemed to die. Lieutenant Amy Carter worked frantically at her sensor station, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Captain, these readings don't make any sense. Those ships appear to be part biological and part machine, but they're unlike anything in our databases. Commander Rick Torres pulled up tactical displays showing the alien fleet movements. There are 43 of those massive ships in the system, Captain. Each one is at least 5 times larger than our biggest Earth battleships. If they're hostile, we're completely outmatched. Dr. Lisa Hamilton studied the sensor readings from her medical perspective. Jake, whatever those ships are doing to the planets is affecting all life signs. I'm reading massive ecological collapse on every world they visit. Jake watched in horror as one of the alien ships positioned itself over a planet's surface. Beams of energy shot down from the ship, and within minutes the green and blue world began turning brown and gray. Cities that had existed for thousands of years simply vanished, consumed by whatever technology the aliens were using. These must be the devourers that the Nexari message warned us about, Jake said quietly. Amy, are you still picking up the distress signal? Amy checked her communication array. Yes, Captain, but it's much weaker now. The source appears to be coming from the asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets. Chief Engineer Danny Brooks had been monitoring the Devourer ship's energy signatures. Captain, those ships are running on some kind of biomechanical fusion. They're literally eating the planets and converting the matter into energy for themselves. Jake made a quick decision. Rick, take us into the asteroid belt using minimal power. We need to find the source of that signal without alerting those Devourer ships to our presence. The Liberty moved carefully through the asteroid field, hiding behind large rocks and using passive sensors to avoid detection. After 2 hours of searching, they found what they were looking for. A damaged alien spacecraft that looked completely different from the Devourer vessels. The alien ship was elegant and crystalline, built with smooth curves and artistic details that spoke of a peaceful civilization, but it was also badly damaged, with hull breaches and failing power systems that indicated it had been in a terrible battle. Danny, can you establish communication with that ship? Jake asked his chief engineer. Danny worked with Amy to modify their communication system. I'm trying, Captain, but their technology is very different from ours. Give me a few minutes to figure out their protocols. After 20 minutes of technical work, Danny managed to establish a weak communication link with the alien vessel. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the damaged ship. What Jake saw there changed everything he thought he knew about alien life. A being made of living crystal sat in what appeared to be a command chair, her body flickering with weak internal light. She was clearly dying, but her eyes showed intelligence and dignity that reminded Jake of the best qualities of humanity. The universal translator that Amy had been working on during their 3-month journey finally activated, converting the alien's words into English. "I am Commander Zara 9 of the Nexari fleet," the crystal being said in a voice filled with exhaustion and sadness. "You should not have come here. You have doomed your people by answering our call." Jake stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Liberty. We received your distress signal and came to help." Zara 9's crystal body pulsed with what might have been surprise. "Human? We have never encountered your species before. How did you travel so far to reach us?" "We've been traveling for 3 months since we received your message," Jake explained. "We came because someone called for help, and that's what humans do." The alien commander's light dimmed even further. "Your species must evacuate this system immediately. The Devourers have been consuming our worlds for over 300 cycles. We have tried everything to stop them, but they adapt to every strategy we develop." Amy stepped forward to join the conversation. "Commander Zara 9, can you tell us about these Devourers? How did this war begin?" Zara 9's image became clearer as Danny improved the communication link. "The Devourers arrived in our space without warning 50 cycles ago. At first, we tried to communicate with them, to understand what they wanted. We thought perhaps they needed resources or territory, and we could negotiate a peaceful solution." Dr. Hamilton joined the conversation from her medical station. "What happened when you tried to communicate?" "They do not communicate," Zara 9 replied. "They only consume. They took our first colony world completely, leaving nothing behind but empty space. We realized then that they were not interested in territory or resources. They wanted to consume all life itself." Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez, the ship's tactical analyst, had been studying recordings of Nexari battles that Zara 9 was transmitting to them. "Commander, your tactical data shows that you always tried to minimize casualties, even among the Devourers. Why didn't you use more aggressive strategies?" Zara 9's crystal form pulsed with something that might have been confusion. "The Nexari Coalition represents 12 different species united by our commitment to peace and cooperation. Even when facing extinction, we could not abandon our principles. We tried to find ways to defeat the Devourers without becoming monsters ourselves." Rick studied the battle recordings with growing frustration. "With respect, Commander, your people fought with one hand tied behind your backs. Every engagement shows you pulling back when you could have pressed advantages, trying to capture rather than destroy, attempting to minimize collateral damage even when the enemy showed no such restraint." "Yes," Zara 9 admitted sadly. "We fought as we have always lived, believing that civilization means choosing the harder path of restraint and wisdom. We could not comprehend the necessity of total war, even to save ourselves." Jake understood now why the Nexari had failed against the Devourers. They were a peaceful confederation that had evolved beyond violence, but they faced an enemy that understood only consumption and destruction. Their greatest strength as a civilization had become their fatal weakness in this war. "Commander Zara 9, Jake said carefully, "humans are different from the Nexari. We understand both cooperation and conflict. We've fought wars before, and we've learned that sometimes the only way to protect innocent life is to be willing to destroy those who threaten it." The alien commander's light flickered with what might have been hope. "Are you saying your species would fight the Devourers differently than we did?" Jake looked at his crew, seeing determination in their faces. "Yes, Commander. Humans fight to win." The crew of the Liberty worked without sleep for the next 48 hours, studying everything they could learn about the Devourers and the failed Nexari war effort. Captain Jake Morrison had divided his people into teams, each one focused on a different aspect of the problem they faced. Dr. Lisa Hamilton led the biological analysis team, working with samples that Commander Zara 9 had provided from previous Devourer encounters. What she discovered in the ship's medical laboratory changed how everyone understood their enemy. "Jake, you need to see this immediately." Lisa called over the ship's communication system. "These devourers aren't really alive in any way we understand life." Jake left the bridge and went down to the medical bay where Lisa had been working with her team for 2 days straight. The laboratory was filled with alien biosamples that glowed with the same sickly light they had seen on the devourer ships. "What do you mean they're not alive?" Jake asked as he looked at the samples under Lisa's microscope. Lisa pointed to the cellular structures on her screen. "Look at these patterns, Jake. This isn't evolution or natural biological development. These creatures are more like a virus that achieved consciousness. They consume because that's literally the only thing they know how to do." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Amy Carter had been working with Commander Zara 9 to understand why the Nexari coalition had failed so completely against an enemy they should have been able to defeat. The Nexari had superior technology, greater numbers, and 300 years of preparation, but they had still lost. Amy discovered that the problem wasn't technical or strategic, but philosophical. The Nexari had fought the Devourers the same way they approached everything else in their civilization, with patience, wisdom, and a desire to minimize harm to all parties involved. "Captain," Amy reported during the daily briefing, "I've analyzed every major battle the Nexari fought against the Devourers. In each case, they had opportunities to destroy entire Devourer fleets, but they held back. Commander Rick Torres had been studying the same battle records from a tactical perspective. Amy's right, Captain. The Nexari could have won this war dozens of times, but they always chose the option that caused the least destruction, even when it meant letting Devourer ships escape to fight again. Chief Engineer Danny Brooks had spent his time learning everything possible about both Nexari and Devourer technology. The really frustrating part is that the Nexari weapons are actually more advanced than anything the Devourers have. But they designed their weapons to disable rather than destroy, to capture rather than kill. Jake listened to all the reports and began to understand the true nature of the conflict. The Nexari weren't losing because they were weak or unprepared. They were losing because they couldn't abandon their principles, even when those principles were getting them killed. Danny, is it possible to modify Nexari technology to be more effective against the Devourers? Jake asked. Danny nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely, Captain. Their energy weapons could be reconfigured to cause massive damage instead of just stunning targets. Their defensive systems could be weaponized. Their industrial fabricators could be turned into kinetic bombardment systems. Dr. Hamilton looked uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. Jake, what we're talking about here isn't just military tactics. We're talking about fundamentally changing how we approach warfare. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez had been quietly studying human military history and comparing it to Nexari strategies. Captain, I think the real difference is that humans have always understood something the Nexari never learned. Sometimes you have to be willing to become a monster to stop a bigger monster. Jake called Commander Zara 9 on the communication system to discuss what his crew had discovered. The alien commander listened carefully as Jake explained their analysis of the war and their ideas for fighting the Devourers differently. Captain Morrison, Zara 9 said when Jake finished his explanation, what you are describing is not warfare as the Nexari understand it. You are talking about total destruction, about fighting without restraint or mercy. Yes, Jake replied honestly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The Devourers don't understand mercy or restraint. They only understand strength and destruction. To beat them, we have to speak their language. Zara 9's crystal form dimmed as she considered Jake's words. For 300 cycles, we told ourselves that we were fighting to preserve civilization and the principles that make life worth living. But perhaps we were really just too afraid to do what was necessary. Amy had been monitoring Devourer communications and movement patterns. Commander Zara 9, our analysis suggests that the Devourers learn from every encounter, but they learn in predictable ways. They adapt to defeat specific tactics, but they've never faced an enemy that fights without any consistent pattern. Rick pulled up tactical displays showing Devourer fleet movements over the past year. Look at these patterns. Every time they encounter a new Nexari strategy, they develop countermeasures within a few battles. But what if we don't give them time to adapt? What if we hit them with something completely different every single time? Chief Brooks had been working on practical modifications to the Liberty's weapons and defensive systems. Captain, I can integrate some Nexari technology into our ship, but the real advantage we have is something the Devourers have never encountered before. What's that? Jake asked. Human tactical thinking, Brooks replied. The Nexari fight logically and predictably because that's how their society works. The Devourers have learned to counter logical tactics. But humans don't always fight logically. We fight to win, using whatever methods work, even if they don't make sense to anyone else. Dr. Hamilton had been studying the psychological profiles that Zara 9 had provided about Devourer behavior. Jake, there's something else you need to understand. The Nexari always fought defensively, trying to protect their worlds and people, but the Devourers have never faced an enemy that actively hunted them. You mean we should take the fight to them instead of waiting for them to attack us? Jake asked. Exactly, Lisa replied. The Devourers are used to being the predators. They've never been prey before. Jake gathered his senior staff for a final planning session. Outside the ship, 43 massive Devourer vessels continued their systematic consumption of the Kepler 442 system. In a few more days, there would be nothing left alive in the entire star system. Here's what we're going to do, Jake announced to his crew. We're going to take everything the Nexari taught us about their technology and combine it with everything humans know about warfare. We're going to hit the Devourers with tactics they've never seen before, weapons they can't adapt to, and a level of aggression they can't comprehend. Commander Zara 9 had been listening to the human planning session. Captain Morrison, what you are proposing is incredibly dangerous. If you fail, both our species will be extinct within days. Jake looked at the alien commander with determination in his eyes. Commander, humans have a saying, fortune favors the bold. We didn't come all this way to play it safe. The Battle of Kepler 442 began at exactly 600 hours ship time, when Captain Jake Morrison gave the order that would change galactic history forever. The UES Liberty had been modified with every piece of Nexari technology that Chief Engineer Danny Brooks could integrate into their systems. But the real weapon they carried was something no alien species had ever possessed. All stations. This is Captain Morrison, Jake announced over the ship's communication system to his crew of 87 humans. Today we don't fight for territory or resources or political advantage. We fight for the right of thinking beings to exist in this universe. No mercy, no quarter, no second chances. The Devourer fleet had detected their presence 3 hours earlier and was moving to intercept them with overwhelming force. 30 massive bioships, each one 5 kilometers long and bristling with weapons that could destroy entire cities, converged on the single human vessel that dared to challenge them. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez had programmed the Liberty's tactical systems based on 3 months of studying Devourer adaptation patterns. Captain, the enemy ships are moving into standard attack formation. They expect us to fight like the Nexari did, using logical defensive patterns. Commander Rick Torres smiled grimly as he watched the enemy fleet approach. Then let's give them something they've never seen before. Amy, are you ready with the chaos protocols? Lieutenant Amy Carter had spent weeks developing completely random tactical sequences that would make no sense to any logical military analysis. All random number generators are active, Rick. Our attack patterns will be completely unpredictable, even to us. The first Devourer ship came within weapons range and immediately fired the same bioenergy beams that had destroyed dozens of Nexari vessels. But the Liberty wasn't where the targeting computers expected it to be. At the last possible second, the human ship had moved in a direction that violated every principle of space combat tactics. Chief Brooks had weaponized every system on the ship that could possibly cause damage to an enemy. The industrial fabricators that normally created spare parts were now firing chunks of metal at nearly the speed of light. The waste recycling system had been converted into a chemical weapon delivery system. Even the food processors were creating biological weapons based on Dr. Lisa Hamilton's analysis of Devourer weaknesses. Target the lead ship with everything we've got, Jake ordered as the Liberty danced through space in patterns that seemed random but were actually calculated to cause maximum confusion. The concentrated firepower from the Liberty struck the first Devourer ship like a sledgehammer hitting glass. The biomechanical hull, which had withstood years of Nexari energy weapons, simply disintegrated under the impact of kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The Devourer fleet immediately began adapting their tactics, just as they had done against the Nexari for 300 years. But every time they developed a counter to one human strategy, the Liberty switched to something completely different. They're trying to surround us, Rodriguez reported as he tracked the enemy ship movements. standard encirclement pattern, just like they used against Nexari Battle Group 7. Not today, Rick replied as he activated a maneuver that no sane military commander would ever attempt. The Liberty dove directly toward the largest Devourer ship, firing every weapon they had while accelerating to dangerous speeds. The Devourers expected the human ship to break off at the last second, just as every Nexari ship had done when faced with certain destruction. Instead, the Liberty passed through the enemy formation at maximum speed, leaving a trail of destruction behind them. Amy had been monitoring Devourer communications during the battle. "Captain, they're broadcasting confusion signals to each other. They don't understand our tactics because we're not following any recognizable patterns. Dr. Hamilton's biological weapons were proving devastatingly effective against the biomechanical Devourer ships. Jake, the virus I designed based on human immune responses is spreading through their fleet. Their biomechanical integration systems can't adapt fast enough to counter it." The battle raged for 6 hours, but it was unlike any conflict the galaxy had ever seen. The Nexari had fought with dignity and honor, trying to minimize casualties and preserve their principles even in the face of extinction. The humans fought with something the Devourers had never encountered: controlled fury channeled through disciplined military thinking. Brooks had turned the Liberty into a weapon that could adapt faster than the Devourers could learn. Every few minutes, he would completely reconfigure their attack methods, using different weapons, different tactics, different approaches to destroying the enemy. "Devourer Ship 12 is trying to retreat," Rodriguez reported as he tracked the enemy movements. "They're breaking off and heading for the outer system." "Not happening," Jake replied coldly. "Rick, intercept course. Danny, give me everything the engines can handle." The Liberty pursued the fleeing Devourer ship with relentless determination. When the alien vessel tried to use the same escape tactics that had worked against Nexari pursuers, the humans simply ignored conventional pursuit patterns and attacked from impossible angles. Commander Zara 9 had been monitoring the battle from her damaged ship, watching in amazement as a single human vessel systematically destroyed a fleet that had conquered her entire civilization. "Captain Morrison, your tactical approaches make no logical sense, but they are devastatingly effective. That's the point, Commander," Jake replied while directing another impossible maneuver that left 2 more Devourer ships dead in space. Logic is predictable. Chaos isn't. As the battle continued, the Devourers began making increasingly desperate attempts to escape or call for reinforcements. But the humans had studied their communication methods and were jamming every frequency the bioships tried to use. "Amy, any signs that they're adapting to our chaos tactics?" Jake asked during a brief pause in the fighting. Amy checked her analysis programs. "No, Captain. Every time they start to develop a pattern recognition algorithm for our behavior, we switch to something so different that their computers can't process it." The turning point came when Danny succeeded in boarding one of the damaged Devourer ships, using a method the aliens had never seen before. Instead of trying to capture the vessel intact as the Nexari always did, the humans simply flew their shuttle directly through the enemy hull and planted explosives throughout the ship's biomechanical core. "Brooks to Liberty," Danny reported from inside the enemy vessel. "I've planted charges throughout their central nervous system. When these go off, it should send feedback through their entire fleet communication network." The explosion that followed was visible from 3 star systems away. The networked Devourer ships, which had always shared information instantaneously to adapt to enemy tactics, suddenly found their communication system turned into a weapon against them. 28 Devourer ships died in the first few seconds after the network explosion. The remaining ships, damaged and confused, tried desperately to retreat from the system. "Captain," Rodriguez reported with exhaustion and pride in his voice, "only 2 enemy ships are still functional, and they're broadcasting surrender signals." Jake looked around his bridge at his crew, all of them battered and tired but victorious. "Open a channel to the surviving Devourer ships." "This is Captain Morrison of the human vessel Liberty," Jake announced to the aliens who had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. "You have exactly 10 minutes to leave this system and never return. If we see you again, we will finish what we started here today." The 2 surviving Devourer ships limped out of the Kepler 442 system without looking back, broadcasting warnings about the impossible predators they had encountered. Captain Jake Morrison watched them disappear into warp space before turning his attention to the aftermath of humanity's first galactic war. Commander Zara 9's damaged Nexari vessel drifted slowly toward the Liberty, its crystal hull flickering with new light that seemed brighter than before. The alien commander had witnessed something she never thought possible, a complete victory against the species that had destroyed her civilization. Captain Morrison, Zara 9 said over the communication link, her voice filled with wonder and confusion. I have studied warfare for 200 cycles, but I do not understand how your species accomplished what we could not. Jake stood in the Liberty's observation lounge, looking out at the debris field that had once been the most feared fleet in the galaxy. Commander, maybe that's exactly why we succeeded. We didn't try to understand them or reason with them or find a peaceful solution. We just fought to win. Lieutenant Amy Carter approached with a priority message from Earth that had just arrived through their quantum communication array. Captain, Starfleet Command monitored the entire battle through our real-time data transmissions. The response from Earth is immediate and unanimous. Jake read the message and felt a mixture of pride and concern. The President of Earth had declared humanity's entry into galactic affairs, mobilizing every ship, every marine, and every resource the planet could provide. Humanity was officially going to war against the Devourers, wherever they might be found. Dr. Lisa Hamilton joined them at the observation window, studying medical reports from the Nexari survivors that Zara 9 had provided. Jake, there are still Nexari colonies scattered throughout this sector of space. Most of them have been hiding in asteroid belts and nebulas, afraid to show themselves while the Devourers were active. Commander Rick Torres was coordinating with the ship's computer to analyze the tactical data from their victory. Captain, our battle recordings are already being transmitted to every human military academy and research facility. The methods we used here are going to revolutionize how humanity approaches space warfare. Chief Engineer Danny Brooks had been working with Nexari technical specialists to understand their advanced technology better. Captain, Commander Zara 9 wants to share their entire technological database with us. She says it's payment for saving her people, but I think it's more than that. Jake understood what Danny meant. The Nexari weren't just grateful for military assistance. They had seen something in humanity that they recognized as essential for galactic survival. The galaxy needed a species that could fight when fighting was necessary, but also build when building was needed. Over the following weeks, more alien ships began arriving in the Kepler 442 system. Word had spread through hidden communication networks that someone had finally defeated the Devourers. Species that had been hiding for decades began emerging from their hiding places, hoping to learn more about the humans who had accomplished the impossible. Amy found herself serving as humanity's first galactic diplomat, using her communication skills to establish contact with dozens of different alien species. Each one had their own story of loss and survival, but they all shared the same amazement at humanity's victory. Captain, Amy reported during one of their daily briefings, we're receiving requests for alliance from 17 different species. They all want human protection against any remaining Devourer forces. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez had been analyzing reports from across the galaxy about Devourer activity. The good news is that our victory here seems to have broken their entire operation. Devourer fleets in other sectors are retreating or going into hiding. They're actually afraid of us now. Dr. Hamilton had established a medical exchange program with the Nexari, sharing human medical knowledge in return for their advanced healing technologies. Jake, what we're building here is more than just a military alliance. We're creating something that's never existed in galactic history. Jake knew she was right. The alliance forming around humanity wasn't based on conquest or domination, but on the simple principle that civilized species had a right to exist without fear. Humans provided the military strength that had been missing from galactic civilization, while alien species contributed knowledge, wisdom, and perspectives that humanity needed. Commander Zara 9 had been working closely with human engineers to design new ships that combined Nexari technology with human tactical thinking. Captain Morrison, your species has given my people something we thought we had lost forever: hope for the future. 6 months after the battle, Jake stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned UES Defiance, flagship of the Human Defense Fleet. The ship was twice the size of the Liberty and incorporated the best technology from a dozen different alien species, but it was designed and commanded according to human military principles. Amy approached with another communication from the Outer Rim territories. Captain, We're receiving surrender requests from the remaining Devourer colonies. They're asking for terms and offering to restrict themselves to uninhabited systems. Rick studied the tactical reports with satisfaction. The entire Devourer Empire is collapsing, Captain. Our victory at Kepler 442 showed the galaxy that they weren't invincible, and now every species that ever suffered under their rule is fighting back. Jake watched through the view screen as ships from 30 different worlds joined their formation. Each vessel was unique, representing a different culture and approach to space travel. But they all flew together under the banner of the Galactic Defense Alliance. Danny had been overseeing the construction of new human ships that would serve as the backbone of the Alliance fleet. Captain, Earth has completed construction on 50 new warships designed specifically for fighting species like the Devourers. Each one is commanded by humans but crewed by mixed species teams. Dr. Hamilton approached with the latest intelligence reports. Jake, we're getting confirmation that Devourer forces throughout the galaxy are either surrendering or fleeing to unexplored regions. The threat they represented for centuries is finally ending. Commander Zara 9 appeared on the main view screen from her new ship, a beautiful vessel that combined Nexari artistry with human defensive capabilities. Captain Morrison, the Nexari Council has asked me to inform you that we are establishing a new colony world in the Kepler 442 system. We want to call it New Hope, in honor of what humanity brought to our people. Jake smiled as he watched the busy space around them, filled with ships from dozens of worlds working together to build something better than what had existed before. Commander, that sounds perfect. The war against the Devourers was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had answered a call for help from across the galaxy, and in doing so had found their place among the stars. They weren't the strongest species or the smartest, but they had something that made all the difference: the absolute refusal to abandon those who needed help. As Jake watched the ships of the Galactic Defense Alliance spread out across the system, he knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had kept their promise to respond when someone cried out for help, and now they would make sure that no one would ever have to cry out alone again.